Hey, it's Andrea. Today, Remmick finally opens up to us, and we don't love what we see. Picard awkwardly tries to get out of a dinner party, and we ask the question, how many levels are there on a phaser? Stay tuned.
Welcome to the TNG Podcast, the number one place in the Alpha Quadrant to geek out about all things Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm your co-host, Shereese.
Hey, I'm your co-host, Andrea. Shereese, we're almost there. We're so close.
Unbelievable. I felt like at the beginning of season 1, it would kind of never end. But I was wrong. It's about to end. And I'm so excited about the episode we are reviewing today.
Yes. Today is season 1, episode 24, Conspiracy, written by Robert Saberoff and Tracy Torme. And we may remember that Tracy Torme wrote the Big Goodbye episode.
Mm-hmm.
So that one has like a special place in my heart. This one was directed by Cliff Bull, and the star date is 41775.5. While the Enterprise is en route to Pacifica on a scientific mission, Captain Picard receives a highly confidential message from an old friend, Captain Walker Keel of the USS Horatio. Keel refuses to discuss his concerns, even though the frequency he's using is supposed to be a secure channel, but insists on a face-to-face meeting. Once the Enterprise arrives at Ditalix B for the secret meeting, the crew discovers the Horatio and 2 other Federation ships already present. Picard beams alone to the surface and is met by Captain Keel and other captains. Keel reports strange orders from Starfleet headquarters and what he implies are suspicious deaths of Starfleet officers and expresses concern of a conspiracy.
Bum, bum, bum.
Oh, yeah. Conspiracy. We get to see Remmick again, fortunately / unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
This is the second and final part of that story arc.
Yes.
There's a lot on here.
So good. So overall thoughts, Andrea. What were your overall takeaways from this episode?
The my overall takeaway is I like the idea of some sort of conspiracy to like overthrow this all-powerful like Starfleet.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great idea. I think the way that they did it is questionable, and those like parasites, like they look like in the early 90s when I was a kid, they came out with those things called creepy crawlers that you could like pour some goo into like a little mold and kind of bake them, and they come out like these like gummy looking worms that you could play with, ?
Yeah, I think they were edible.
Were they? Okay. See,
they were.
I'm a gummy bear addict, so maybe I could have gotten on board with that. But those like creepy crawlers were so weird looking to me and just like not awesome. Like the stop animation, like claymation of them is pretty hysterically bad. I had some total laugh out loud moments, but overall, like it's very season 1. It's very season 1. I don't know
if though. Did you like the story? Did you like the episode?
Yeah, I mean, it's not my favorite of season 1, but I liked it. I would watch it again, mostly just for that outlandish, ridiculous fight between Admiral Quinn and Riker, which I just cried laughing the whole time. And my notes were like, roundhouse kick, coffee table smash. Like those were my notes. It was so good. And I was like clapping my hands and crying laughing because it's just so bad. It's amazing. It's amazing. So overall, yeah, I like the episode. How about you? Yeah. I know you really dig it.
I was so okay. This is the one and only story arc. If we don't count Q, which let's not, this is our only story arc in season 1, something where the story of one episode actually carries on to another episode. And this story arc begins way back in Coming of Age, which was a couple episodes ago. So that's also a little bit weird that their story arc isn't back to back, because that's almost always how they do things in Star Trek TNG. They always have like a to be continued, as we'll see in future seasons, and they kind of pick it up in the next episode. But that's not what they did here. They waited like a couple episodes before they came back to this. And what I think is actually kind of brilliant about that is that this story arc was about a conspiracy. So it kind of makes sense that it might take a little while for the conspiracy to really reach the upper echelons of Starfleet. And then this episode, I really, really liked, for the same reason that you said, Andrea, is I really like the idea of this like invasion of this all-powerful Federation. It's very interesting. And then as they kind of, and we'll get into the details of this, but as they dig into this conspiracy, you're kind of like, but who is behind this? And like, why would they do this? Because the Federation has tons of enemies. And it's just kind of like, but who would be so clever?
Yeah.
And so like clandestine. And then we don't get a ton of satisfaction with that, I think. But like, I don't know. I just thought that was so interesting, and I feel like they could have maybe taken this even further. I don't know.
Yeah, you know what? I think you're right. I actually do like that the story arc ends multiple episodes later, because you're right. From the point where a conspiracy kind of begins and it's just sort of hidden in the shadows, and Admiral Quinn was like, I'm not really sure, but something is wrong in Starfleet, to the next week being like, okay, the plan has unfolded and we're full steam ahead. It's like, no, you're right. That doesn't make sense. Like, it needs a while for things to like build and moves to be made. So
it might have been nice if they did little touches of it in the intervening episodes, but they don't. That's not the kind of show that this is.
I do have some trivia about this story itself. So the original version of the script did not feature alien parasites at all. This conspiracy in question was supposed to just be like a military coup within Starfleet. Just some faction of people get disenfranchised and like try to take over. But good old Uncle Gene was totally opposed to such an idea, because he thought that Starfleet would never stoop to such methods. And it's like such a utopic government because, you know, human beings don't have human feelings apparently anymore, and nobody wants to ever like take power or consolidate power for themselves. So he was like, there's no way that like people within Starfleet who like take an oath would do such a thing. So Tracy Torme suggested, you know, that it was a parasite, because suggesting that it was anything less than a perfect government like just did not fly with Gene.
And you know what? That actually makes sense, because I think I put somewhere in my notes, like, here, what's a little bit refreshing and sort of not, is that here again, we have mind control, but this time it's with parasites instead of viruses.
Yep.
And it's the same thing for the same reason, right? Is that Uncle Gene is like, nope, we cannot have any kind of dissension among the ranks. So then they have to say, well, the only reason there's dissension is because of this outside force. And they did the virus thing like 50 million times in season 1. So they had to pick something different. And they picked a big parasite. And I actually appreciate that, because it almost makes you forget all the other mind control episodes.
I feel like as the episodes progress in season 1, the writers must have been like, mind control, but hear me out, parasite. And they're like, oh, we've already done mind control. It's like, hear me out though, not a virus. Oh, like, I feel like that's how it must have gone.
I feel like they were just like, can we do this story? And Gene's like, no. What if we added mind control? And he's like, yes.
All right, let's dive into this episode. Number 1. Clearly, scants are going out of style because they are fucking everywhere in this episode.
In this episode, every single time they open a scene on the bridge, a scant walks across.
Yep.
Every single time. In fact, for the past, I think, 10 episodes, every time the episode opens up on the bridge, a scant walks by. But this one was every time the scene opened on the bridge. I was like, holy cow, they were like really trying to make use of all those extra scants they made.
Yeah, so I mean, we've talked about this a bunch, and we have seen scants a lot in season 1, but holy shit, they were like throwing scants in there like it was garlic salt, like just seasoning every single scene. And I did see some men in scants, which we haven't seen since like episode 1 or 3 or something. So, but yeah, that's like all over the damn place. Just, oh my God. I just wrote scants everywhere in capital letters. All right, so Data and Geordi are like kind of, Geordi's telling Data a joke on the comms. And I thought, this doesn't seem very professional. Like, you're on duty and you're sitting here like cracking jokes. Although like the rest of the bridge does seem to be like kind of like relaxed, and Troy's talking about going for a swim in Pacifica and how like swimming in the holodeck isn't the same. They're heading to Pacifica for like some scientific exploration, but I guess like Pacifica is an oceanic world, and so it sounds a little bit like Ryza. Yeah, it sounds like Ryza-esque. Like, I can't wait to swim, and just like, yeah, so it seems that they're just kind of like just meandering on their way to Pacifica to like meet for something, but it looks like it's going to be pretty lax. However, I don't know if you noticed this, but this code 47 comes through, and the code 47 is for captain's eyes only. So Riker has to wake up Picard in his quarters. And my first thought was, why is Picard asleep when everybody else is on duty?
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
It's not the night shift. Right. Like, it's nothing. Right. Like, why are you asleep when literally everybody else is working? Is it your day off? Do you guys get days off?
Maybe he does get days off. We don't know.
Maybe that's why he's so cranky all the time, because he just needed a nap. I don't know.
So he's napping, or off duty. It's an off day. Or something. And then Riker's like, Captain, code 47. And he's like, code 47. And he hops up and he's like, hello, what's going on? And so he's talking to his old buddy. And this buddy, Walker Keel. Walker is like, we need to talk ASAP. Can only be in person. let's do this. So he comes out. Picard comes, or does he come onto the bridge or does he just come? I don't even remember. But he tells everybody to make a change.
Yeah. And he comes onto the bridge and says, we need to
change
get
course.
there quickly.
Yes. And he says, make no logs and no mention of this. Like, there will be no record. And they're like, well, should we tell Pacifica that we're going to be late? No, don't tell anybody anything. Just change course and get down there immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody looks very suspicious. And they're like, should we be worried? Is something going on? And he's like, we'll talk later. Like, I'll tell you later, whatever. And I thought this was such a contrast to the previous episode that started this arc to coming of age when Admiral Quinn came on and was just like, do it. You're under investigation and I'm not going to answer anything. And everybody was just like, but what's going on? I'm not going to tell you, but I don't want the first officer in there. And everybody felt like so I just compared this to, Picard is being super secretive, but everyone trusts him. They're confused. They want to know what's going on, but they kind of, there's a sense that like, they're going to know what's going on when they need to know, which is the exact opposite of the way Quinn came on, where he was just like, you're not going to know because you don't need to know. And I just thought that was really interesting. Like emotionally, how I felt different with Picard being secretive versus the way Quinn was being secretive.
Yes. It definitely had like shades of similarities where it was just like hyper secret. But yeah, I think that he handled it a little bit differently from Quinn. That was like, just do it. And I'm not going to tell you jack shit. And like Picard is like, if I have to tell you, I will, but right now is not the moment. All right. So they get to Daedalus B and several Federation ships are already in orbit. I don't know about you, Shereese, but if I were having some super secret meeting and then a bunch of other ships were there, I'd be like, what?
I feel like this isn't that secret now. You invited friends.
Yes.
I don't know, but I mean, the whole time Picard's just like he's very confused as well. He doesn't know what's going on. And the only reason he came was because turns out that Walker was one of his oldest friends. That Walker was his friend from way, way, way back. And that's the only reason why he just dropped everything, trusted him, came. And when he saw the other ships, he was like, whatever, and just went anyways, all based on their like historic friendship, right?
Yeah. Okay, well, this begs the question. Is there anybody for you that if they gave you the code 47 that you would drop everything and go to for some super secret something?
Definitely. You are one of those people, Andrea. If you called me and you were just like code 47, like something, something awful is going on and I can't tell you over the phone. Yeah, I would definitely I have an electric car, so it may take a while to get there. I mean, charge it, go halfway, charge it again, get all the way. But, I would go. I would totally go. I have a handful of people that I would absolutely drop everything and go.
That's a very nice place to be as an adult, I got to say, because we have a lot of friends when we're kids and there's less friends when we're a little bit older. And then as we get into like full blown being a grown up adulthood, our, friend circle tends to, in general, like get smaller and smaller. And then it's just like a few people, core people you really trust. You are one of those people for me as well. If you gave me the code 47, I would be excited that you said code 47. And then I would jump into my non-electric car and drive over there. And I'll be like, you know what? Don't come to me. I'll just come to you because I'll be there in 25 minutes.
Exactly. I was going to say that. You'll be here in like 20 minutes.
Yeah. If you come to me, it's 9:30 a.m. now. I'll expect you around 7 p.m.
I'll be here in time for season 3. Don't drive electric, people. Get a hybrid.
So here's a little something, and this is for a very niche group of viewers who love like 80s TV shows, as I do. Captain Scott. So so Picard gets down to the planet, and there's Walker Keel is there. There's a woman, Captain Scott, and another captain who's like a bluish alien. I didn't get his name. Mm-hmm. Captain Scott, the woman, I was like, God, she looks so familiar. And I know her as like a tough guy character, but from where? I couldn't put my finger on it. And then I remembered one of my other favorite shows, The Golden Girls. She plays a hooker that's in jail. So
that answers it right there.
That's a big shift from Captain Scott, although, spoiler alert, Captain Scott dies in the end of this episode, and things don't turn out so well for her either way. She's a prostitute. She's a captain gets killed.
Didn't you see that coming? I mean, I did. This is the theme. Whenever we have some, minority who's interesting, they get killed off, right? Like the other, like when we had that chief engineer who was Indian, and I was like, an Indian chief engineer, this is amazing. And then he immediately dies. And you're like, come on, dude. So when I saw her, this scene, okay, wait, let's back up from this scene and then we'll talk about why I think Captain Scott's amazing and how I knew she was going to die at some point. So he gets onto the planet and then there are all these, there's these other captains there and Walker starts asking Picard all these questions to verify his identity. And I totally had a flashback to Harry Potter and the polyjuice potion that turns people into another person. And you have to ask like all these questions to make sure they are who they say they are. So we get,
okay, we've just leveled up in our nerddom. We've just leveled up right here.
if we could, we did. And so he's asking all these questions. And not only did I think that was actually really smart in a conspiracy situation to like check people's identity, but also you get this little glimpse into the background of Picard and Crusher. Because you find out like, oh my gosh, like this is the guy who introduced Beverly to her husband, Jack, who's passed away. And you're like, whoa, so they've really been friends forever. Yes. And now I'm interested because there's actually this episode where Picard like goes back into his past. I don't know if you remember this episode.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like, and he has those friends. And I'm like, is that guy? But I feel like that guy was Crusher, not this guy. But anyways, that might be a continuity boo-boo, but that's totally understandable. So anyways, so they're asking all these questions. And then Walker's like introducing, Captain Scott because he already knows the other guy, the like cool alien looking guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so with Captain Scott, what I love is that first of all, Black female captain, what? Like,
yes.
TNG, that is a big freaking feather in your cap.
You putting on the red captain's uniform as your cosplay years ago, you just straight up are Captain Scott right there.
Yeah.
Like kick-ass Black woman captain.
Without the deathy part. Totally.
Without the deathy parasite part. Yeah. But you're right. She's a badass because she's like the youngest person ever in Starfleet history to make captain. And
which is so cool.
Yes. And she's fucking confident about it. She owns it. And I love that. Women are taught constantly from a very young age to kind of just always be like apologetic. So even where one person might be like, I did this, and this, and I rocked at it. Women are sort of taught that it's not, I don't know, ladylike or some other stupid shit. That's like, you can't own your accomplishments without being like, I mean, but it's not that big a deal. It's like, no, dude, it is a big deal. You rock. Picard asks, are you as good as they say? And she says, yes, I am. And I was like, yes.
I love that too. I actually applauded out loud. I was like, oh, if all women everywhere could, when someone's like, are you that good? And you're like, yes, I am. I was just like, boom, that's right.
Yes.
I love that. And then at that moment, I knew she was going to die.
If Patrick Stewart, no, because if Patrick Stewart had been asked, are you as good as they say? He would say yes. And he would do some sort of humbling comment, whatever about it. But it wouldn't be out of line at all. And people would be like, yeah, he is. And there would be no second thought about it. But Captain Scott said, yes, I am. And I was like, oh,
yeah,
thank you. Yeah. But yeah, they can't keep an interesting minority around. That's not Star Trek.
Yeah.
So
at least not in season 1. We'll see what it looks like by the end of season 7.
At least not in season 1 and most likely not in TNG, but Discovery, yes.
Right. And then exactly. And it's like, anyways, this was a very proud moment for me to see this because I just felt like they were really empowering to women and minorities in this one scene, which is something I have not seen in all of season 1. Yeah. So I was like, yes. And I'm sure they're going to kill her before the episode's over because we can't keep this going. And that does happen, but not till the very end. So it's like a little bit longer than Singh. Singh didn't last past like his introduction, which was such a bummer. I'd have loved to have an Indian chief engineer, but anywho.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving on.
So Walker is warning Picard that something is amiss and not to trust anyone. And this doesn't really arouse a whole lot of suspicion in Picard because he's like, you haven't really given me anything to be suspicious about. Like there's no concrete data, but Walker is saying, listen, some people have gone missing, some like high level Starfleet officers have died under very suspicious circumstances. There's been kind of a lot of cover up.
And then he says like old friends of mine have been bluffing through conversations about old days. Like they're not who they say they are. And I don't know how that's true, how that happens.
Yeah. And I think that this is a testament to how close Walker and Jean-Luc Picard were in their past because he's like, fine, I'll keep my eyes open. And he does. It's not, he doesn't just blow them off and he's like, oh, you're just imagining things. All right, I'll see you around.
That's something I really appreciate on TNG in general, like on Star Trek in general, because I actually remember this happening even in Voyager, where a character will say there's something suspicious I mean, so far, like if it's Wesley, it doesn't count. But if somebody else says there's something suspicious, then it's like, well, most people,
Wesley.
right? Poor Wesley. They're just like, shut up, boy. But if someone else says there's something suspicious, then people take them seriously. If they go like something, I felt something weird or something just happened while I was asleep, they don't just go, oh, that was in your mind. You were just like, they don't dismiss them. They always go,
no.
Well, we didn't see anything, but let's run a sensor check. Let's do a sweep.
Yeah.
Let's do like they actually take people at their word and check it.
Let's run a level 1 diagnostic. Yeah.
Yeah, they check it. And I just really appreciate that. Like, I feel like, how empowering would that be if you worked for a company or an organization that if you felt something was off and you said something, actions were taken immediately, where people were like, we're not sure about that. We don't see that, but let's check just to be sure. I feel like that just feels like such a, like, really, what's the opposite of toxic? I don't know. Healthy, good, amazing environment to work in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, how many times in our life have we noticed something is off or odd and you mention it and either you're blown off or you get the lip service like, I'll look into it. And then, it's kind of an eye roll as you walk away and you're like, all right, so nobody's going to do anything about that. All right, whatever. But yeah, so Picard and Riker, so Picard comes back to the ship. Oh, before this, Walker does make a special point to say, please send Beverly my regards. Or please say hi to Beverly for me, which Walker knows full well Picard can't do that.
Because it's a super secret meeting.
Yeah, because it's super secret. So he knows he can't do that. But I feel like, wow, Picard is not the only man who like holds a candle for Beverly.
Oh, I didn't see it that way. I just felt like they were old friends because he had introduced her to her husband. But yeah, that could totally be true.
I could totally see that. And later, Beverly walks up to the bridge to ask, like, did you see him? That would have been so nice. And I mean, maybe it's an old friends thing, but it seemed like a little bit more. Also, Beverly, why couldn't you just comm badge up? Oh, why did you have to leave your post and come all the way up to the bridge? Yeah.
We know how that goes. Comm badges are only done when it's like, I don't know, when it's dramatically convenient.
Yes. So, yeah. So a disturbance is detected and they go take a look at it and it is the Horatio.
It's what's left of the Horatio, which there's so little left, they didn't even know what it was. It took them a while before they figured out this is actually a starship remains. And then from the amount of remains, it has to be the Horatio. Like there weren't even markings left of the ship.
I think they did. So Worf did say like, oh, I'm sorry, sir, it's the Horatio. So I think they found some sort of markings.
He said by the amount of debris. What do you say? Flotsam.
It could only be.
That was the biggest ship of the ships or whatever. So it could only be that ship from the amount of debris, which is like, dang, they like obliterated that thing.
Yeah. So it's immediately like, uh-oh, something is totally wrong. And I was also really bummed because I really liked Walker Keel. I wanted to see more of him. And he's like a handsome silver fox kind of captain. I was like, we could see more of him.
Yeah.
I want to see more of this guy.
He's cool. He's kind of edgy. He's kind of like, I don't know. He's not what you picture for a captain. I think he would have been a really cool character to keep. Could we have kept Walker and Scott? Those would have been two cool captains to keep along.
Back. Let's start a petition and bring those babies back because I tell you, and like Walker, I think could be a good foil for Picard because Walker is much more like casual and just sort of a little bit more. Yeah. And, Picard is all about that, the formality and all that. But anyway, so Walker is dead, unfortunately. And so is everybody aboard the Horatio. So we know something has gone horribly wrong. And he was not wrong when he said like, hey, you need to keep your eye out. There's some sort of conspiracy going on. So Data is assigned this role of like going through all the records to find any abnormalities. And something's up. There's been a reshuffling of like the head people in certain sectors of Starfleet. It's all been very hush hush. Picard and Riker were like, well, why weren't we informed of these changes? And he's like, it was all done in like a very casual sort of way so as to not, and he made this great like euphemism, if that's even the right word. Yes, he made this great analogy. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. So it was done all very, very like quietly so that to not arouse suspicion. Yeah. So the Enterprise is like, bam, let's go to Earth.
Which I thought was really interesting. I was like, well, I mean, what is the right thing to do in this situation? If your government has been taken over by an evil cabal, what do you do? And this is the same question I asked so many times in season 1 when we had someone under mind control who was like the captain or like Beverly Crusher. Where you're like, well, who do you go to when the captain's gone loopy? who do you go to for medical advice when the only doctor on the entire ship is possessed? Like it's always like, well, shoot, and so in this like, oh no, Starfleet, there's been some kind of conspiracy, but we don't know who. We know that Walker said the highest levels, but that can mean all of them. That can mean half of them. That can mean, we don't know. And so for them to be like, you know what? And that was actually, when they were like, what are we supposed to do? Like, just go to Starfleet and just ask them. And they're like, yeah, why not? Let's do it. It was just kind of like, well, I guess so. Where else are you going to go? Like, what else could you do? I don't know. What other options?
I can see that, but I can also, if it were me, I'd be like, before we go racing to Earth and essentially alerting the top brass that we're on to some strange activity, like we're on to you, something weird is going on, which now paints a target on your head, I would be a little bit more careful. And I think I'd be a little bit more deliberate about who I reach out to, what, you know what I mean? Like try to gather a little bit more information, sort of piece together a picture so I know how to proceed. Because, if my boss is corrupt and then I come to my boss and I'm like, hey, I found out that you're doing some corrupt shit. That's probably not a good idea, right? Like that doesn't seem like the best idea.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I feel like the boss being corrupt is like when the captain gets possessed. I feel like this situation is when like the president of the company or the CEO is corrupt or something. And then you're like, well, shoot, tell him, who can I tell? Because if I tell my boss, they're going to be like, what am I supposed to do about it?
Yeah.
And so I feel like I would have wanted to have backup, but you can't trust anybody, which was Walker's entire point. Like Walker was saying, like, I'm glad you're still you. We don't know who we can trust. I think people on my ship have been compromised, so I can't trust my own ship people, my own crewmates. So it's just a very precarious situation. And I do think, I don't know, when they just go back to Starfleet and they're like, well, let's just get down there and find some answers. I'm kind of like, well, how could this in any way that's good? Like, I'm not seeing any positive end to this scenario.
It sure doesn't. So they jet to Earth, which I always love seeing Earth on Star Trek. Whenever the ships come back, I'm like, hey, like
I know that place.
Yeah, that's where we came from. Like that's always kind of nice. But so the yeah. So the admirals are puzzled why the Enterprise is there, right? Which makes sense. Mm-hmm. Remmick is there, and I love that Riker is like, well, I'm not thrilled to see him. Mm-hmm. I thought, oh, this is sort of breaking that rule of like all Starfleet officers have to like get along. Yeah. But I was like, okay, so they're invited to go down. Admiral Quinn beams aboard, and he's got a laptop with him that's got the pink creepy crawler in there.
Yeah, he's got a laptop case.
He's got a laptop case.
But no laptop
before laptops were a thing, which is actually perfect because if you look at it, somebody had to manufacture that for the show. Mm-hmm. But laptops obviously weren't a thing in the 80s. So like that, if you look at it, it's like, that's like the perfect laptop case, actually. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. I think it's like a futuristic, like satchel or whatever is maybe what they were going for. That now we would just call a laptop case because now we have laptops.
Yeah. So Picard meets Quinn and a couple things happen right off the bat. Here we had the super secret, Code 47. We had the super secret mission on Ditalics B, or this meeting. And then here's Picard talking with Quinn literally in the hallway, being like, so there's some conspiracy. Like, anybody could have heard you, dude. What do you do? Like, in the hallway, like, crowded people, scants galore, kids running by, Wesley fixing some shit in the hallway. Like, what are you doing? Like, you have ready rooms.
Yeah.
And observation lounges for this kind of shit. Like,
or just regular quarters. Or, like, really any room. Apparently, there's just, cargo bays galore. They could have just popped into an empty cargo bay, I'm sure.
Yeah, you could have gone to transporter room 14 and had a chit chat with nobody there. Yeah, no, like, first of all, that's a major breach of conduct and does not line up with how severely secretive, like, this whole storyline has been so far. So I'm like, why are you talking about this in the hallway? But he can tell, like, Quinn is just not himself, right? Like, Quinn is all chipper and cheery.
Because he mentions it very gently. He doesn't say, hey, what about that conspiracy? He goes, do you remember that thing we talked about last time? That thing that you were kind of worried about with Starfleet? And then he goes, oh, Jean-Luc, you took me far too seriously. I was just worried about new this and new that. Ha, ha, ha. I would love to see the ship. And you're like, oh, okay. And he's even like, you're looking very well. But last time I saw you, you were not looking well. Of course, I'm happy with life or whatever. You're just like, oh, okay. Like, y'all didn't get a dossier on these people or like, I don't know. Because I feel like back to Harry Potter with the Polyjuice potion, at least they did some kind of research on the characters they were trying to pretend to be. Like, they did something. They kind of like sounded like, they tried to like walk like them or something. But anyways.
I'm sorry. In a Star Trek podcast, quote, back to Harry Potter with the Polyjuice potion. That's like gold right there. J.K. Rowling is going to call us and be like, stop talking about my show, my TV, like my movie and my books on your show. But anyway, so yeah, you're right. Like, they should have gotten some background information, although didn't necessarily need it so much because Picard has been familiar and has known Quinn for many years as well. So it's like, you would know if your friend is acting weird. And, thank you, Picard, for being on the case, because a second he tells Quinn, like, hey, I need to beam down for this meeting, but like, Riker's going to be here to like, whatever. I'll see you later. He pulls Riker aside and he's like, that is not Quinn. Mm-hmm. I don't know who he is, but it's not him.
Which is why he left Riker, because him and Riker were supposed to go down together immediately.
Yes.
And then he goes, you could tell when he's like, Riker's going to, escort you everywhere you need to go. And Riker's looking like, oh, that's new information to me, but I'm not going to say anything because that's what the captain wants me to do. And I actually appreciate that too. That again is like the trust between the two of them, where they could just kind of like do that on the fly and just be like, all right.
Yes, absolutely. And like, I love that. And I love that they do have that where it's like, that's not him. I don't know who it is, but you need to keep an eye on him. And come up with some excuse for Beverly to like give him a full medical evaluation, because this is something.
I love that. And then he's all like, what kind of excuse? And he's like, I don't know, figure it out. It's like, oh, okay, thank you.
I'm out.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is where we see a little bit of the Picard coming out with like, just do it. Like, don't ask me questions because I don't know the answer either.
Just figure it out.
Figure it out. Yeah. Talk to Beverly. You guys can work together. That's why you guys are on this crew.
So in that moment, Picard is going to beam down and Riker is like, well, if some shit is up, like maybe you should bring a phaser. And Picard's like, all right, thanks. And just beams down. I'm like, why didn't
One does not beam into Starfleet headquarters armed. Like, that's so inappropriate of a captain to do. And you're like,
he did tell Beverly that a little bit later. But yeah, in that moment, I was like, take one. They have those little teeny ones that like fit in your pocket. You wouldn't even know you had it.
I don't see why that would be inappropriate under the circumstances. Because if he came down and like, why do you have a gun? He'd be like, oh, I forgot. I mean, I don't understand why he couldn't just arm himself.
Yes.
Like, what are you going to do if there is some crazy conspiracy? How are you going to defend yourself? He's not going to do hand-to-hand combat like Riker.
You know what happens if that is the case? What happens is exactly what we saw on the show. Like, he was basically trapped and going, oh shit, while they're eating worms. Like, that's all he was doing. But before we get to that, Riker comes to Quinn to be like, hey, you ready for your tour of the ship? But he just like waltzes right in. He doesn't even like,
they didn't do any doorbell ringing in this episode.
No, there was no doorbell ringing. All doors. He just pops right in. And then, Quinn is looking at the little parasite and shuts it. And of course, Riker's like, hey, you want to see, what's in the case? And so this fight ensues because Quinn wants to put the parasite into Riker. And this fight ensues, and it is the best effing fight in Star Trek history.
And by best, you mean worst?
No, I mean best. Because it was so bad. It was the worst, best fight. Number one, if Riker could do those crazy ass roundhouse kicks and like grasshopper kicks, why don't we see that any other place? Why don't we see that anywhere else in the whole like the kick that he gives Quinn when Quinn grabs him and Riker's like, uh-oh, something's wrong. And he's like crazy strong.
Yeah.
He punches him. And like Quinn is like, ha ha ha, is that all you got? So Riker goes, oh shit. And then does this like grasshopper kick, but essentially they're standing like 6 inches apart. Yeah. So you basically have to shoot your leg like vertically to like kick somebody else. Like, whoa.
And Riker's like 7 feet tall. So for him to
that's not gonna happen. Weird. And like I kept pausing because I just kept wanting to see all the body doubles, which were so great.
So the body doubles getting this huge fight, and they're breaking the coffee table and they're doing all kinds of kicks, and it's just it's unreal. And I'm like, it takes quite a while. Riker's on the floor, I think the third time before he finally hits the comm badge and says security. I was like, why didn't you do that the first time? Like,
why didn't you do that immediately?
When Quinn first manhandled you and like tossed you, you should have been like, security. Like, let's get a few more people on this old guy. Maybe it was pride. I don't know. But eventually he did hit his comm badge, thankfully, because had he not done that, I mean, he was still knocked out cold by the time they arrived. But had he not done that, like, he just would have been infected with the parasite, and like nobody would have been the wiser. And I don't know how they would have hid the coffee table being all broken, but
well, so here's a couple of things that I noticed. Number one, what I mentioned, the body doubles, they're fantastically bad. The old guy, so Admiral Quinn, I feel like his body double was Admiral Mark Jameson from Too Short a Season. It was just like a very clearly young guy with gray hair, like wig on. I was like, Mark, is that you? Like, that treatment has been working wonders for your Iverson's disease or whatever you get. So there was that. And then the smashing of the table, that was great. I mean, I just wrote like body doubles, roundhouse kicks, coffee table. So here's something interesting. Geordi and Worf race to Quinn's quarters. And I thought, this is your security detail? Worf and Geordi? Why is Geordi engineering and comms and security? Why?
And where's the team?
Where are you?
Back in the days when we had good old Yar, she would at least come with the team. At least, I mean, sometimes it'd be her and Worf, but they're both in security. But a couple times when they were like, we need security down here, there'd be like 3 or 4 guys. Like that to me is a team. But like,
that's a team.
Just saying, Worf is not a team, and Worf and Geordi sure as heck is not a team. But whatever. They come.
But Quinn proceeds to just beat the shit out of Worf and Geordi, and I think it's hysterical because he throws Geordi out the doors,
like
the doors go like a rag doll, and Geordi goes flying into the hallway. And I thought, with these doors, wouldn't they open in time for him to like go flying through? But they just get blasted off.
Too fast. Yeah, and I was like, I didn't know those doors were that flimsy that a human body could go through them. That's the first time I've ever seen those doors. It's kind of like in that episode with Worf and like the backstory of Worf where
with Kittimer.
Yeah, no, not with Kittimer.
The catwalk. The catwalk that breaks. Yeah.
The catwalk that breaks and is like now just like, fake glass, and they just fall right through it. And you're like, wait, people walk on that. There's like equipment up there. Why is that not stronger? It's kind of like that with the doors.
I feel like there should have been like an oversight committee on like building the Enterprise and all these other subsequent starships because the doors are too flimsy. The catwalks are sure as shit too flimsy.
Yeah. Anyways, Geordi goes flying, but let's be honest, Geordi wasn't really going to do anything in that fight anyways.
He sure wasn't. Sorry, Geordi. Sorry. If we need help with the isolinear chips, we'll call you. But other than that, really, this is not the place for you. But then he's like, Worf, let me see like your warrior heart or whatever. And then have you noticed that every time Worf gets into a fight, he does the weird like double fisted, like he tries to smack people.
That's how Klingons fight.
Yes, I was like, what's with the double fist? Okay.
That's how Klingons fight. Like they carry that through all the way through the seasons and even into Voyager, that they always fight with this double fisted like punch. I guess it's like a future kind of a punch. I don't know. It's future punching. That's why they all that's how they fight.
I kind of want to go to like post-COVID, like one of those like county fairs where they can measure like how hard you punch and punch something with one fist and then do the double. Cause I feel like the double punch would be not as hard.
Yeah. Cause if it was harder, MMA fighters would use that. And they don't.
Absolutely. Well, luckily, Dr. Crusher just happens to be strolling down the hallway with a phaser and just knocks him unconscious.
Well, I'm sure she was part of the security detail.
Yes, because we want the chief medical officer to potentially get knocked out.
We're lucky we didn't get Wesley.
That's true. He's not in this episode at all. So
he's not. But usually he's the one who's the security detail.
Well, here's the thing. If Wesley were in this, he would have been the one that discovered the conspiracy, had the secret meeting, contacted Walker Keel on the Code 47. He would have been, he made the decision to go to Earth. Like, he would have done all of it.
But even without him, the Crushers saved the day.
Still saved the day.
It was still a win by Beverly Crusher.
Yeah, it was. So she knocks him unconscious, and they were able to determine that there's this alien that's taking control of Quinn, and that creepy little tail sticking out of the
gill. Let me just tell you, actually, the last 10 minutes of this episode, I watched looking away the entire time because I was just like, things coming out of people's mouths. That's not the whole thing. That's just gross.
This is the worst part of the episode.
Oh,
this is like
so gross.
This for me. Okay, so I remember as a child watching this episode and being horrified and terrified because, the chest exploding, the head blowing up, the aliens coming out of the mouth. But now I see it, and it's like this little claymation thing, and I was like, oh, look at that thing coming out of the okay. Like, it just cracked me up.
It's very 80s special effects, but the thought of it is still disturbing to me. And I am a freaking grown woman now.
If this was made in 2020, with 2020 like CGI, it would be like too creepy and horrible to watch. So Crusher has determined that there's a parasitic alien that's taking control of Quinn, and that tail in the back of the neck is a giveaway. So she calms down to Picard, who's down on Earth, and he can't reveal what he knows without endangering himself, right?
And what happened to our super secret comm channel? They were just like chatting in the hallway.
Yeah.
It's Starfleet headquarters.
Yeah.
I was just like,
they sure were. Yeah. So she's like, so it's this alien, it's taking control. You can tell because this little thing is sticking out of their neck. Da, da, da. So he's like, oh, fuck. Like, I have to now go into this dinner, which the COVID quote unquote survivor in me, like we're going through COVID. I saw how far apart those tables were and I went, nice. This is good.
This is COVID approved.
Yeah. I was like, this I can deal with.
So before they go into dinner, though, and before Beverly says, hey, mayday, mayday, like something fishy's going on, they have like tea. They have some whatever tea or ale or something like that.
It's a tea, yeah.
And they are like to the Horatio, which I thought was super tacky because they're like kind of giving a subtle like F you to Picard. Like, we know you guys were talking. We know you guys were in that mission and we're the ones who killed him, you know? And so they're all sitting around drinking. They're like, drink up. It's delicious. And then he has a little sip. And I was like, don't drink it.
I know.
If you think there's a terrible conspiracy going on, don't eat or drink anything. Don't come to dinner. Like, he's never watched a movie, I think.
This for me has been a sticking point in every movie and TV show I've ever seen with a conspiracy like that. When you suspect that your food or drink has been drugged, what do you do?
I know what you don't do. You don't drink it.
You don't, but like, what excuse can you make up or what can you, because at this point they're still exchanging the pleasantries and the veil hasn't been dropped. Like, I'm on to you. I know you guys are parasite controlled or something. Like, so he's still sort of pretending to go along with things. And I was like, don't drink the fucking tea, Picard. Be like, you know what? I just filled up on some Earl Grey like you wouldn't believe earlier. Yeah. Like, I'm good on tea.
And he takes a little sip and then that's it. And I was thinking about you actually, Andrea, and a while back when we were talking about that episode where everyone crash landed and Picard was trying to take care of Crusher underneath the like underground, and there were some roots and she was like, break it in half, bite it, whatever. Yeah. And how you were like, no, like that's not how you do it. If it's poisonous, you like touch it to your lips, you do this, you do that. And I was thinking that would have been a good call for this move to just you know, like pretend to drink it and just touch the liquid to your lips and then see if there's any weird reaction. You know, I thought, okay, he could have done something like that. Call. But really, like, it didn't matter because they weren't going to poison him. They were just going to stick a freaking parasite in his throat or whatever. But still.
Yeah, we'll see. That's a good point. Like, touch it to your lips and pretend to sip or something. I don't know. But yeah, I was like, that's a very, very bad idea. But he goes into this dinner and the dinner is all grub worms. And I was like, I'm sure that's like what the parasite wants to feed on. Right. But I was like, why, if you're Starfleet Command and you're still pretending that everything is hunky dory, why would you roll out the worms?
Yeah. Well, see, everybody in that room were parasites. Yeah. And they were going to take Picard. But this is the weird thing about this episode is that all of this was just psychological torture for Picard.
Oh, okay.
For absolutely no reason whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. Because I was like, what's the point? Just grab him, stick a parasite in his mouth, and call it a day.
And keep it moving. Like we were going to do with Riker. Just keep it moving. Yep. But for whatever reason, for Picard specifically, this was all psychological torture. So the drinks and toasting to the Horatio was like messing with him without saying anything. Showing him the grub worms was messing with him without saying anything. Showing him that like Riker's been taken, Scott's been taken. It was all just to freak him out. And then they were going to turn him into the parasite thing because they planned on capturing. They weren't going to kill him. They said we're going to capture you and Riker so we can have
Dr. Crusher. Enterprise. Yeah.
So it was just a mess with him for like no reason.
Yeah. Okay. See, that I can see because I was like, what purpose would that serve to be like, worms? Let's freak you out. Like it was just messing with him. Well, that's nice. That's nice to know. So Picard, the backing away that he does is so great. He is equal parts disgusted and terrified. Yeah. And he is like very
wishing he had a phaser.
Yes. He is doing the most awkward back away ever. And like nobody even bothers to be like,
they know he's not going anywhere. They know he's not going to get out.
I guess that's true. I mean, but can't you just be like, Enterprise, want to beam up? Beep, like, and call it a day? Like, Enterprise want to beam, get the fuck out of there. You know something is wrong. Get out of there.
That would have been me with the freaking tea.
Yes.
I'm good. I think I need to go back. Check on Riker, see what's up.
The minute that Picard said, you know what, let me take this call from Beverly, I'll be right in. They're like, okay. And they all go in and leave him alone. I'd be like, Beverly, beam me up right now. Like, Data, beam me up. Yeah. So he goes in, He's trying to back away. Riker comes in looking infected. He's got this little tail sticking out of his neck. Captain Scott walks in. She's also being infected. So Riker goes to eat the worms like everybody. But it's a ruse because why would you need to put your hands in worms? Just start blasting. You don't need to pretend to eat whatever.
But I actually think that was good from a storyline perspective that he didn't just walk in the door and just start blasting everybody away. That would have made more, like, that would have been more efficient if he just walked in and was like, I've got you, Captain, pew, 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 pew. And if he had brought an extra phaser and they could both be just like, but what's nice about him doing this whole ruse is that you actually do, as the listener, as the viewer, we get to see who's behind this and why they're behind this and what their plan is a little bit more than if he had just walked in and started blasting.
Right. He did tease it out and they were talking. They were sort of revealing their plan.
Here are our big plans and this is what we've been doing and we've been taking over the government and we're going to do this next. And you're kind of like, oh, so from a storyline, it's like more satisfying because you get some answers. And you're also freaking out because you're like, oh no, Riker's got it. And the way, like, when Riker woke up, he just like grabs Beverly from behind.
Yeah.
And that scene stops. So you're like, oh crap. Like Quinn must have gotten the parasite into him and he must have been infected and he did take over Beverly. And so you're starting to think like, oh crap, like there's no way for Picard to get out of this scenario. So like, as a viewer, that makes it so juicy.
As always, I'm poking holes in things. Not the creepy kind of holes, but just, plot holes. And as always, you're the answer lady. That's like, you are like the answer lady, Shereese. That's amazing. So, Riker starts blasting away. I called him Admiral what's his name. Admiral what's his name runs away. And he's running down the hallway and Beverly has said, you have to set the phasers to kill. It's the only way to like totally take them out. So Scott has died, which makes me sad. You see the parasite like crawl out of her mouth. Admiral what's his name runs away. They have this little chase in the hallways and it cracks me up because I don't remember what his name is and it doesn't matter, but he's running for his life and Riker and Picard are in pursuit and they go, Admiral, and he stops and turns around to like look. And I'm like, the number one thing you don't do when you're running for your life is when people say stop, thief, or whatever, you don't stop. You don't do that. Don't do that. Keep going. So they get him.
Yes, that was in my notes. If someone is chasing you, don't turn back, even if they call your name. That was my note to self.
Yep. Don't do that. Don't do that. All right. So yeah, they get him. He dies. Parasite comes out of his mouth. And then here's where we get this crazy ass climax that as a child terrified me to no end. So the parasite crawls under the door. And they walk it, Riker and Picard run in, phasers at the ready, and Remmick is in there doing something. And we hear beeping, and the parasite starts crawling up his freaking leg. And they're like, Remmick, look out. And he's like, nothing to be afraid of. And it crawls
and
into
Riker was going to shoot it. And Picard's like, no, don't shoot it.
Let's just see what happens.
Let's see how this plays out.
Yes.
Because clearly Remmick is not freaking out at all about it. So what's that about?
Couldn't be less concerned about it. So it crawls into his mouth, and then here's the thing that scared the shit out of me as a child. His neck starts bulging. He's like bursting full of parasites, which I'm like, as a biologist, you can attest to this. When you're doing your undergrad for biology, there are so many times in so many different classes that you have to do, like there are chapters on parasites for damn near every bio class. There's a whole section on parasites. Mm-hmm. I always had the skin crawlies all the time. They're just, parasites they're gnarly. They're crazy and it's cool how they operate, but they're disgusting. They're so gross. Anyway.
They're cool and they're gross. That's true. And even when I used to teach microbiology in college classes. And so I would teach about these parasites and I would always give fair warning to my students because I know how I get grossed out by things, even though I'm a germ expert. It's the irony. So I would always be like, warning, this is a parasite that's going to be in X part of the body and it's going to look like Y. So it's going to be a little gross. And a lot of my students were pre-nursing students and pre-med and stuff. And so they're like, whatever, not a big deal. We can see anything. And I'm like, all right. Don't say I didn't warn you though, because like it's one thing to just see something gross. It's another thing to see it with no like warning that it's going to happen.
Yes.
And I think that's the difference. We didn't we didn't know this was going to happen with this person. We didn't know what was going to happen with
his
Remmick.
Neck is freaking bulging. And then Riker and Picard are like, I've seen just about enough of this. So they shoot Remmick
in the face.
And we learn that phasers have a 4th level above kill, and that's face melt.
Wait, we already had a 4th level. That was fire.
Sorry.
That was when they just set things on fire.
So here we have a few levels. We need to break down the levels of the phaser. Number 1 is stun. Okay, we also have kill. We know that. We also have heating up rocks.
Oh yes,
the
yes. We have warm.
We have warming things. Yeah, toasting things. We have cut open a door. So like a laser welder. And now we have head explodey.
Oh, and we had catch on fire.
Yeah, we had catch on fire.
When Lore set Beverly on fire with the phaser.
I feel like those dials are going to be really confusing because as we get further and further into the seasons, we're going to be like, oh, and then there's a level that cuts your hair too or something. We're like, these are crazy levels. So yeah, we've got face melty, head explodey level of phasing.
Which was actually quite awful. This show is not usually a gory show, but the last 10 minutes of this episode were kind of gory.
Kind of gory. Gross. It was like crazy gory. So this is straight out of an 80s horror movie playbook right here.
Yeah.
Totally. Head explodey, chest cavity fucking explodes to reveal like a mother parasite, like the mother alien.
It's basically Alien.
It is totally Alien. I did write mother parasite bursts out of his chest a la Alien, and they kill that one too. So the blood and the face melty and the eyeballs and the bulging neck, like this is a huge break.
Oh yeah.
This is a huge break with traditional Star Trek alien life form. So tonally, this episode is completely different. It's completely different because of just like all the horror components. Anyway, so they kill that alien that's like screaming horribly. And I wrote clean up on aisle 2 because it's just, if you look at the body that's left and Dan Curry, who did the special effects on this, took a photo of his head. Like he kind of stood behind like the exploded chest cavity model and kind of stuck his head on top and took a picture, and it looked very funny. And I was like, oh yeah, he's like kind of playing with like the model that he made. They did a great job with that. Like you have to build a whole model of a human with like an exploded chest and all this shit. But if you look at it, there's like the smoking remnants of Remmick. There's like all these little small parasites like strewn everywhere.
Out. Right. It was like the one that climbed into his mouth. Like all the little baby parasites were also in there.
So nasty.
Like, come on, dude.
So nasty. Come on, you guys. Tracy Torme, I love you for the big goodbye, and I hate you for this one. Because gross.
Okay, one thing I noticed in this scene before we got to the explodey part was when they first walk in and he like turns slowly in the chair. I thought, was that the wheelchair?
No, it wasn't, but it's so similar.
So cool. This chair looked really cool. I actually really liked this chair.
And I thought to myself, is that chair really necessary? Can't you just be standing at a station like beeping? But whatever.
We need the chair for the slow dramatic turn.
Yes.
It wouldn't be as dramatic if he just turned around standing. And it wouldn't be as cool with the explosion because you just see like little legs sitting there.
This is classic 80s movies where like the bad guy is in a big chair and then slowly turns to reveal himself. Yeah, I get. I never thought of it that way. Well, they did take all of this out of like major 80s like horror movies. So
every 80s movie that ever happened was this scene.
So here's the thing, that beyond the like terrifying head explosion and the alien bursting out of the chest, the homing beacon. That to me is so scary. So we're left with a freaking homing beacon.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Beeping out.
So wait, let's paint the picture for those of you who haven't seen this episode recently and just go watch it. This one's worth watching. You know, this one's like a yes, go watch it.
Yeah.
So Remmick is this, festering pile of remains and they look at each other like, oh, that's weird. And what I just thought about is like now our upper levels of government have all been murdered by the two of you.
Yep.
Where's the cleanup with this? I don't know. But they said that all the parasites
isn't there an inquiry, a court-martial, something? It's like, the ship takes off and everything is
exactly. Like, I feel like there should be some kind of, there's dead bodies, people. There should be some kind of investigation, but whatever. What we learn is that the parasites die without the mother creature.
Yeah, so they all died.
So Quinn comes back to life because Beverly was saying there's no way for me to remove this parasite. Like, it's controlling his mind. But when the mother creature dies, the parasite in Quinn also dies. And so Quinn gets his mind back. And so supposedly every infected person in all of Starfleet has now been made whole, except for the ones that Riker and Picard murdered. They've all been made whole, and so they're fine. But then we go like, what was Remmick in that room doing? What was the, the evil bad guy before he turned his chair? What was he up to in there? And then Data kind of reveals, like, we figured out what it was. He was sending a homing beacon out into the middle of nowhere into uncharted space. And so you're just like, holy crap, there's more of them. And now he's bringing in more of the mother, because we only had one mother creature.
He's basically saying, come and get us. Like, we're here.
We're here in Earth. Like, this is our new home base or something. And remember, there was only one mother creature in this entire scenario. There was like a bajillion little baby creatures, but only one mother creature, like, controlling the entire hive. So it's like, wow, we don't want, I mean, even one more would be devastating to Starfleet. So that was really creepy. And I thought, like, man, it's too bad the storyline never picks up again, because that kind of unknown it's so interesting. It's like so engaging.
There are so many, you're right. Like, there are so many engaging endings to storylines that I keep wanting to do, like a Where Are They Now? Like for Symbiosis, you know, like, where is this like drug trade in space? Like, where are these planets now? Like in their like societal evolution. Like, I love the very last shot in this episode, which is the Enterprise humming along, and you just hear, like, in the background, the homing beacon. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, it is so scary.
For this episode.
Oh, it's killer.
So good.
It's killer.
Oh my goodness. From beginning to end, I was like, the music where it's like, ding, 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 ding. Like, the creepy 80s music was so good. Like, the score was amazing, amazing. And I felt like this episode would have been the perfect season finale.
It should have been, and there are reasons why it would have been better that way. But we will get into that next week, because I do have some deep dives about that. So do you have any final thoughts on this episode before we wrap it up and allow a homing beacon to shoot out into the middle of space?
No, my final thoughts was I really liked this episode. It was fun to rewatch it.
Yeah, it is a good rewatch. Just be prepared if you're going to watch it out there. To, you know, maybe don't eat a heavy lunch before you watch this episode, because you might want to
do what I did. Look away for the last 10 minutes and just listen. You'll still get it. You'll still know what's going on. Explosions, people yelling. You'll get it.
This might be the only episode ever where, Shereese, we have a Star Trek review show, and you're like, I didn't watch the last 10 minutes. I just listened to it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, it is, as we said, like, way out of the norm. So they're not normally this gory and gross, but oh my God, next week we are reviewing season 1, episode 25, The Neutral Zone. Shereese, it is the season finale for season 1. I couldn't be more excited to put this dumpster fire, as you said, of a season behind us, because, oh my God, I never want to rewatch this season again.
Yeah, I mean, there have been some gems. There's definitely been some really good episodes in season 1.
Yeah.
And there have been some really bad episodes in season 1. So we've had a mixed bag. But I've said it before, I'll say it again. This show ages like fine wine. I am excited to see season 2 and then 3 and then 4. And as we go on, it just gets better and better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
See you next time, guys. Thanks for geeking out with us. Be sure to join the crew at thetngpodcast.com to be the first to know when we do our live shows or host events exclusively for our members. We'll see you next time.